Now, once again, Raymond Arroyo.
Welcome back to The World Over. They are one of the most vivid symbols of life at the Vatican and one of the oldest military units in the world. For over 500 years, they have stood guard over the Vatican and the Pope. There's a new exhibit touring the country right now featuring exclusive photographs and paraphernalia chronicling the lives and history of the Vatican Swiss Guard. It's called The Life of a Swiss Guard, a private view. The traveling exhibit is curated by Dr. Romina Cometti. She sat down with me recently here in our D.C. studio. Take a look. So, Romina, I want to start with you. Tell me about the origins of this exhibit. It's a little odd to do an exhibition into the private lives of the Swiss Guard. It conjures up all kinds of images. Whose idea was this?
Well, I have to say, it was my idea. Okay. We got this photographer. He was asked by the Swiss Guards to take some photographs of the previous commander, Daniel Arroyo. And he asked afterwards, like, can I stay a little more, like a couple of days, and take photos of the Swiss Guards? And Daniel Arroyo said, like, oh, perfect. He was a very proactive commander. He wanted to have material things. So he said, like, oh, several photographs of my guards would be a great idea. And Fabio took these pictures for 3 days, and when we were looking at these pictures, they were very different, because he is a contemporary art photographer in Milan. And so the shooting, the angle, and the feelings that were communicating were totally different. Were contemporary photographs of one of the most ancient orders. Well, it's the most ancient, I think.
Yeah.
It's the most ancient order of military still existing.
Yeah, some people think of the Swiss Guard because of the bright colored outfits that they see at the papal audiences, that, well, they're there for show. These are like, the elves at Macy's during Christmas time. But that's not true. They're actually a fighting force there to protect the Pope.
Yes.
And their lives are somewhat unknown to us.
Yes.
So what do we learn from the exhibit?
We learned in the exhibit to see these young soldiers that are, yes, a military force, but they are also a peaceful military force. And this is very important, especially in this moment. They are very young. They all come from Switzerland. So you have these 20 years old that come there and they decide to sacrifice their lives because they are compelled to stay inside the Vatican and sleep there. If they decide to proceed with their career, the military career, so they decide to stay, not just for the 2 years, which are kind of compulsory, and they decide to get married, to have children, they need to have a space in the Vatican because the Swiss Guards only can live there. For them, it's a vocation. They are Swiss Guards for all their lives. The people, the Swiss Guards that are in Switzerland, they came back. They feel they always come back on the 6th of May every year for the oath, the swearing-in ceremony.
The oath, yeah.
And if something would ever harm the Holy Father, they're ready to come.
Ken Martin, tell us, why did you, as a patron of the arts, want to sponsor this exhibition? What did you see here that you thought people in America needed to see?
Well, I think it's important that people understand the history that stands behind the church, not just from an ecclesiastical or perhaps a monumental standpoint, but from what really goes into the day-to-day operations of operating the Vatican, protecting the Pope, and making sure that he is safe. Because he's out in the open piazza in front of St. Peter's a lot. You don't necessarily think there's any security there for him. He's obviously very exposed there. All of us, whether we're Catholic or not, I think are really invested in the Pope and his safety. You hear that from people across the religious spectrum, the great amount of respect that they have for our Holy Father and his security and his safety.
Romina Cometti, you really curated this entire exhibit. What did you learn from doing this and collecting these 80 photos and artifacts associated with the Swiss Guard?
I learned that what really matters is the feeling. As I said, like their vocation, the religion, their faith.
Their personal involvement.
Yes, the personal involvement. you should have seen that, because we showed them the photographs, and some of them, the photographer gave them the camera, so they played around with this camera. They're very young, and this what really it's the most important part of it. It's also, I mean, they are 20 years old. They wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning to take the shifts. They stay all night guarding the doors of the Vatican and the door of the Holy Father where he sleeps.
Yeah, wow.
So it's a very different way of seeing youth. As you know,
there's a wonderful story about the Holy Father and when he was first elected, and he was staying, of course, in Casa Marta, San Marta, and he came out and he noticed that there was a Swiss guard standing there, and he asked the guard, "Have you been there all night?" And he said, "Yes, Holy Father, I have been." And he said, "Have you had breakfast?" He said, "No, Holy Father, I haven't." So he goes back into his rooms, comes out with a chair first, and tells the guard to sit down. And the guard said, "I can't do that. You know, my commander will have my head if I sit down." Well, he made him sit down, because the Pope said, "Well, I'm the Pope. You have to listen to me." Then he goes back in and brings out some breakfast for him. Because this guard, as Romina said, had been standing there all night long, making sure that he was protected.
What does it cost to bring an exhibit like this to the United States?
$30,000, and that was due to the generosity of the patrons of our chapter. Through their dues and some individual donations, we were able to raise the money to bring it here, and we thought it was important that it come to the nation's capital, since it was going to a lot of other places in the United States.
And it'll be here through May 22nd?
Yes.
And then where does it go?
To Minneapolis.
To Minneapolis.
The Basilica of St. Mary, and has been in Boston the previous month, and in California was unveiled in December 2016.
Tell me what you want people to get from this when all is said and done. I'll start with you, Romina, and then I'll go to Kim.
I would like them to see Swiss guards in a new way. They're not just there standing, like you see these handsome guards. They are people who have a very deep faith. They learn to stand still for hours and hours at the bronze door. And they give a message of peace.
There's real discipline, and they have to commit for a number of years. They don't just come in for 6 months. They have to stay for a while.
2 years.
Of course, they've been doing it for hundreds of years. As I think we all know from church history that they have protected the Pope. They have sacrificed their lives to protect the Pope. And they are noted for their ability not only to protect, but for their discipline and their martial skills.
Well, thank you both for being here, and we will certainly check out the exhibit, and we'll tell people where they can find it.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Pleasure. The Life of a Swiss Guard, a private view brought to you by the patrons of the arts in the Vatican Museums, is currently showing at the Basilica of the National Shrine in D.C. until May 22nd. It moves to the Basilica of St. Mary in Minneapolis, Minnesota on June 3rd, where it will remain until the end of July. Go see it if you can. That's all the time we have for now. Until next week, the show continues on Facebook and Twitter. Like me on Facebook, follow me on Twitter. The links are at RaymondArroyo.com, as are details of my Chicago, Dallas, Houston, and Boston book signings. Whew, got to relax this arm. Be sure to join us next week. Until then, we'll be scouting the world over for all that is seen and unseen. On behalf of the staff and crew of EWTN News, thanks for watching. I'm Raymond Arroyo from Washington, D.C. Bye now.